I can't stand the word empathy, actually. I think empathy is a made up New Age term that it does a lot of damage, end quote. This is a quote by Charlie Kirk that has not only been wildly taken out of context, but he also says immediately afterward that he prefers sympathy over empathy. A sympathy that is not being given to him by most of the people who are recycling this quote, even while they point to his previous comment about empathy as a justification for a lack of concern about his murder. I'm also quite sure that these people are not interested in the valid distinction that he was making between these two terms. It's very telling that of the thousands of hours that Charlie has spent speaking publicly, that there are mainly two quotes that are constantly being circulated as evidence of his hatefulness and justification for the hatefulness that others are expressing towards him and his murder and others like him. I wonder if any of us had a fraction of the amount of time that Charlie spent speaking publicly, how many of our comments will be able to pass such scrutiny without being considered as hateful by anyone? Too many seem to think that because Charlie promulgated hateful views, according to them, that his murder is at best not to be lamented, and at worst it's to be celebrated. Let's pretend for a moment that his views were actually as hateful as people say they were. That it wasn't just a run of the mill conservative viewpoint that was simply more prominent and influential, shared by tens of millions of other Americans. What then are the implications for justifying such a murder? I'm pretty sure that most of us have a family or a friend who has expressed views that are far worse, and should they be gunned down in cold blood, in front of their families and friends. We do not want to live in a country where violence is an acceptable or normalized response to speech that someone considers to be hateful. Interracial marriage, same-sex marriage, women's rights, anti-slavery, just to name a few of the things that were considered to be extreme viewpoints until all of 5 minutes ago. By that logic, do we then justify the assassination of Martin Luther King, since so many considered his views to be extreme? Unlike violence, which is immediate and has an undeniably physical impact, speech, even when we consider it to be harmful, is mediated by our minds. And we all have some agency in deciding how we want to perceive things. It's a slippery slope to treat them similarly. When we erase the line between expressing a hateful idea and committing a hateful act, we are given those with the thinnest of skin, or with an ideological fervor, or those with a mental instability, the right to silence others with force. And such people exist on all sides, not just our side. We can treat speech with the caution it deserves by using legal means to punish incitement and threats, by protesting, debating, voting. But we can do this without condoning or resorting to violence. No one has a universal formula for hate speech. And in this melting pot that we call our country, there are so many people who are going to consider our most benign views to be harmful and offensive. And that does not give them the right to be murderous or violent towards us or those that we love. As a moderate, there's much that I disagreed with Charlie about, but he was a champion of one of the core pillars of our democracy, and that pillar has been severely fractured by his murder. And this is why it wasn't just a typical murder, and why we should all be concerned about such political violence. He never shied away from the most profound disagreements. He met them with patience and thoughtfulness. He challenged us to courageously express our opinions and to refine them through dialogue. And he cautioned us about what might happen when we stop debating each other. I'd like to end this with a clip from the governor of Utah, after capturing Charlie's killer, making a case for why we should all be concerned about such acts of political violence. Rest in peace, Charlie Kirk.
I've heard people say, well, why are we so invested in this? There's violence happening all across our country, and violence is tragic everywhere. And every life taken is a child of God who deserves our love and respect and dignity. This is certainly about the tragic death, political assassination of Charlie Kirk. But it is also much bigger than an attack on an individual. It is an attack on all of us. It is an attack on the American experiment. It is an attack on our ideals. This cuts to the very foundation of who we are, of who we have been, and who we could be in better times. Political violence is different than any other type of violence for lots of different reasons. One, because in the very act that Charlie championed of expression, that freedom of expression that is enshrined in our founding documents, in having his life taken in that very act, makes it more difficult for people to feel like they can share their ideas, that they can speak freely. We will never be able to solve all the other problems, including the violence problems that people are worried about, if we can't have a clash of ideas safely and securely. Even, especially those ideas with which you disagree. That's why this matters so much. Over the last 48 hours, I have been as angry as I have ever been, as sad as I have ever been. And it was, as anger pushed me to the brink, it was actually Charlie's words that pulled me back. I'd like to share some of those. Charlie said, "When people stop talking, that's when you get violence." He said, "The weak can never forgive. Forgiveness is the attribute of the strong. The only way out of the labyrinth of suffering is to forgive. Welcome without judgment, love without condition, forgive without limit." He said, "Always forgive your enemies. Nothing annoys them so much." A few months ago, I referenced this last night, Charlie posted to social media, "When things are moving very fast and people are losing their minds, it's important to stay grounded. Turn off your phone, read scripture, spend time with friends, and remember, internet fury is not real life. It's going to be okay." He again said, "When you stop having a human connection with someone you disagree with, it becomes a lot easier to commit violence." He said, "What we as a culture have to get back to is being able to have a reasonable agreement, where violence is not an option."